Hello and welcome to That's Just Wild with me, Steve Backshall.
And me, Lizzie Daly.
And me, Sarah Roberts.
The podcast all about nature, wildlife, and how I once had a baby spitting cobra gob in my mouth while I was searching for a dropped hotel room key.
Whatever you're into, I guess.
So this is our very first remote recording because we're off doing exciting things. Lizzie, where are you?
I am in the tropical Cornish land currently. I've actually had quite an exciting few days. I'm here for a very specific reason. We've had quite a big marine heatwave here in the UK, and as a result, we're seeing lots of common octopus. Now, I've only had a glimpse. I've only had a glimpse of an octopus once, and I like to think I've spent quite a lot of time in UK waters diving. But guys, all I can say is that was probably one of my best dives in the UK.
How many did you see?
8 or 9. They were like tumbling out of the kelp, hidden in crevices. There was one that I was with for quite some time, following along across the seabed. It started to feed, and then it found another octopus, inked in its face. They had a little bit of a tussle and then swam off. It was epic. Yeah, so
Very
good.
cool. What about you, Sarah? Where are you?
Oh, I'm doing nothing quite as exciting. I'm finishing a film edit, so I'm back up north, just hibernating in a cave, basically. So I wish I was swimming around with octopus. But where are you, Steve? I bet you're doing something cool.
No, I am at home, but something very cool is happening as I'm talking to you. Have I told you guys about Kez? No? Kez is a baby kestrel who was born here last year and has been basically living in my house. It spends the nights above my door on this little post which is covered over, so in the rain it can be sheltered. And we find on the doormat as we leave the house every single day its pellets that it's regurgitated, and I, being a nature geek, take them apart with the kids, and we've never found a single remnant from mammal prey. We haven't found a single vole or anything like that. In fact, they're always full of beetle wing casings. And as I'm talking to you, our baby kestrel is on the lawn in front of me, hopping around, eating bugs, eating insects. It's just completely wild. I'm gonna post the video and everything so that we can put it alongside this. But we feel like he's our pet.
Wow.
And clearly, although the literature doesn't really talk about this, he hasn't yet got to the state, I'm saying he, almost certainly a she, got to the stage of feeding on mammal prey and is instead picking beetles off my lawn. How cool is that?
Wow, that's amazing.
How old is Kez?
Well, a year. So still in kind of juvenile plumage, looking so beautiful. And hunting right in front of us, and going through the whole process with the kids of taking the pellets apart, finding the beetles inside, and now I'm seeing it. It's so
That's
cool.
Awesome.
Anyway, today we're going to be talking about the punk.
Oh yeah.
To my two millennial co-presenters, that was a style of music and fashion from ancient history. Have you even heard of the Sex Pistols?
Yeah, heard of, but I have to,
Sing us a song.
Sing you a song from the Sex Pistols? You mean scream you a song?
Go for it.
So when I think about punk, I think about, having the spiky hair, the shoes, the ripped clothes. And my question is, did you ever go through a punk phase, Steve? Was that you walking down the high streets with an epic hairdo?
Lizzie, I am the man that style forgot. I have never gone through a fashion phase. I have never worn anything other than either my PE kit or something from an army surplus store. So no.
That's a shame. I was hoping we'd be able to dig up some good punk memories from the stores off.
I might argue, though, that punk, or to be punk, means something much bigger than that. So it's a cultural expression of almost Dadaism or nihilism, loud, expressing opposition to authority and social norms, with that anti-establishment, even anarchic element to it. So, are there animals that do that? What do you think?
100%. I mean, I would also say that's probably the best part about the animal kingdom, that we are full. We have so many big characters out there.
Well, from a look, there's a lot of animals that immediately spring to mind. But when you start thinking about that whole attitude, that punk attitude, I kind of instantly... Well, what's the first animal that comes to mind when I say that?
Cockatoo.
For me,
Ooh.
it's the wolverine. It's got to be.
Yeah, okay, I'm with you. I'm totally with you, Lizzie. Wolverine and honey badger, two very closely related animals from different parts of the world, identical attitude, both punching well above their weight, and neither of them could care less. And I love that about both of them. So honey badger is in the Guinness Book of Animal Records as being the most aggressive animal on Earth. A single honey badger will drive lions off their prey, lions plural, not singular, just by turning up and going, ah, and having this utter psychotic attitude that makes even lions think, oh my gosh, with that amount of attitude, he must have some serious firepower. And then the wolverine from, northern latitudes is an animal that's not that much bigger than our own badger and can take down a moose. They can kill an actual moose.
Actually, I had my first sighting with a honey badger recently in Zambia and was just in awe of this pair that were they have this like epic trot, don't they? You talk about the attitude and the boldness, the way that they move makes them just look so cool, like they hold their own. But I've got more experience kind of in the field with wolverines. And my first and only sighting of wolverines was in Finland. I was in this floating hide, waiting for bears. It was like 3 a.m. in the summer. And all of a sudden, out of this kind of thick forest comes this wolverine, clambers up this tree, like it just didn't even care. It was just the easiest thing. Sniffing around, just they've got a real presence. And ever since then, I've always wanted to make a film or do something with the wolverine, but I've only ever seen tracks. I've seen them in Canada, I've seen them in Alaska. You can find them even in places, across Russia. They are the most hardy animals. And I think that ability to survive and thrive in really harsh environments and have massive territories and still be able to survive, I think has got to make them one of the punkiest for sure.
Yeah, they had the alternative common name of the glutton. Did you know that? Which is just essentially down to the fact that they're seen as being an animal that can never get enough. If they get stuck into a carcass, even if it's frozen solid from the Arctic Arctic cold, they'll just keep eating until they practically burst. And I love that just overwhelming sense of I am absolutely awesome and I don't care what you think and what kind of animal you are, but if you take me on, you are going to have chunks torn out of you. I'm lucky enough to have worked with both wolverine and honey badgers, both in captivity and in the wild. There's a honey badger that I worked with in South Africa that they kept in this really big enclosure, and it just would break out all the time, and it would just steal stuff from around the property and then bury it all underneath its bed. And it had locks that it would take. Every time they had a padlock, he'd get up, he'd rip it apart, take it, hide it underneath his bed. He was just this absolute anarchic presence. I do have a slightly sadder story with the wolverine, working on the north shore of Alaska, right up where the Arctic sea ice begins, filming polar bears, and we saw this teeny tiny black dot in the horizon coming towards us. We're all focused with our binoculars with this expanse of empty white and this little dark dot going, what's that? What on earth can that be? And finally, when it got to a couple of 100 metres away, we're like, it's a wolverine. And the guy beside me was going nuts. He said, I've lived here my entire life. I've never seen a wolverine. And it was such a special thing to them. And as we watched, a couple of snowmobiles came hammering out of the local town. And that evening, as we settled down to dinner, someone came in with their wolverine fur-lined coat that they had already, killed and used to line the fur.
Can't surely have been the same wolverine though, because
that's what they said.
Right, I've seen a honey badger, but I've never seen a wolverine. What do they actually look like?
Bit bigger, darker. They don't have that kind of blonde hairdo that the honey badger does. They're almost universally black or dark brown. Very, very shaggy fur, and they're in that group, the mustelids, the weasel family, all of which punch above their own weight. So a stoat that can kill a rabbit many times its own size and then drag it across the grass to bring it to its kits. Weasels likewise, the otters, the badgers, the skunks. This formidable family. Skunk. Why didn't I think of that? That is the classic punk animal.
Do wolverines make a lot of noise? You know, because honey badgers, they've got quite a gnarly noise that they make. Their growls it projects. What about a wolverine?
Very similar. Very, very similar. So I have tussled in the snow with a semi-tame wolverine, again in Alaska, and this thing just fake biting me felt like it was going to rip my arms out my sockets and then beat me to death with them. And it does make an almost identical sound to the honey badger, that kind of...
Oh my God.
I actually... I met this guy, Mike, many years ago, and he grew up in the middle of nowhere in Alaska. And he was telling me a story about how he raised 3 wolverines. And just his fascination with them just went through the roof, just because he realised just how intelligent and smart and strong they are. But I feel like that's only something you can do in Alaska. Just say, oh yeah, casually raised 3 wolverines. It's kind of weird.
What about you, Sarah? What are your punkiest animals?
As I said, the first one that jumped in my head was the cockatoo, just because of the Mohican style that they have when they have their feathers popped up and they like to dance. But I suppose on the whole note of spikes, there is the devil firefish. You may also know them as lionfish. The devil firefish have now got a new territory, which is in the Adriatic Sea in Croatia. So just similarly to our lionfish, which are invasive and are turning up everywhere, these devil firefish with the crazy spiky feather-like almost fins all over them, and they're poisonous, they're out competing, they're turning up, they've got no natural predators, and there's a bit of a worry, especially from the Institute of Oceanography and Fisheries in Split, that about the damage that they're going to do to the MPAs there, because I guess just like the honey badger, they don't... I'm really trying not to make that one quote, because the honey badger is really followed by that viral video where it's like honey badgers don't give a...
Give it, do it.
And I'm like that. Yeah, same kind of thing going on there. But yeah, I mean, I've seen the lionfish situations around the world, especially in the Caribbean. But I hadn't heard of these devil firefish, and I especially didn't realise we had them in Croatia and around that area.
So the situation with lionfish in the Caribbean is one of the most scary invasive species stories in the world. We're not 100% sure how they got there. There was probably significant escapes or deliberate releases from aquariums. And the big problem is, although the Caribbean and the Indo-Pacific, where the lionfish comes from, would appear to be, at first sight, almost identical, there are no native predators of lionfish in the Caribbean. And they reproduce by, laying thousands and thousands of eggs, and there's nothing that eats those eggs. And so the populations have just exploded. I've been out on several lionfish hunts where people will go out deliberately and take as many lionfish as they possibly can, and they're bringing back a couple of hundred. And then you go on a wreck and you might see 1,000. And a lot of people who do very rare tech diving down to 100 meters or so are saying that down there they're even more common. They are highly venomous, they are predatory, they munch everything, and they are expanding at a terrifying rate. And we've said quite a few times that we should do one of these on invasive species, and the lionfish would be one of the absolute classics for us to go to, knowing they're off the coast of Croatia now, and it could happen in the Mediterranean. That is big news.
Yeah, I think the worries are on other fisheries as well, because there's so many people dependent on certain fish species there for the diet, but also for the economy. But you said you weren't sure about how they spread. One of the ways that I didn't know until recently is cargo ships. So cargo ships have to bring water into their ballast to balance the ships out. So when they go into one port, they'll put water in the ballast, so into the ship. They'll suck in a load of seawater, essentially, to balance whatever they're carrying in terms of their freight. And then when they go to the next port and they take that freight off, they'll empty their ballast as well, depending on the weight of the ship. So over the years, a lot of lionfish and other species have literally been transported around the world in freight ships, where they've just come in and out the inside of the boat. So much so that recently the boats have actually changed their systems now, basically when they suck in the water and they empty the water, they now try to kill everything in the water at the same time. But of course, they're going to be sucking in plankton, small fish species, larger fish species. And there's obvious reasons why they do that, because you don't want invasive species. But yeah, it's all a bit tricky, really. It's a tricky area to navigate.
They're such a dominant species, and you'd hope that with the number of recreational divers out there, obviously not reaching 100 metres with those tech divers, but generally, day to day, would be able to start picking off the invasives and restoring some of that balance. And wasn't it that they were accidentally released from an aquarium or something in Florida?
Hurricane Andrew, was that in the early 1990s?
That's it.
Yeah, I think there's a few different areas with a few different releases, but they're actually quite tasty. I don't know if you guys have ever eaten them, but
I've not.
You can prepare them if you take all of the spikes off. We used to, when I was at Bimini, we used to do lionfish bashes, and it was exactly as Steve's saying. Like, there was a competition within like 24 hours, and people would launch around trying to catch as many as they could. But all of those often were eaten. Like, they're quite tasty if you know how to get rid of the spikes.
I nearly gave my series producer a coronary at one of those events. We were filming exactly one of those off the coast of Mexico, and I did a free dive down and saw this lionfish. It was down at about 20 meters down, and it kept moving and going into different cracks, and I was following it. And then I realised that I was done, that I'd completely spent all the oxygen I kept in my body. And I was like, oh God, if I actually swim for the surface now, I'm going to have a shallow water blackout. I'm in big trouble. And I had my camera operator who was with me on scuba filming me. So I turned around to him and went, and made to, pass me his regulator. So he gave me his regulator, and we shared air up to the surface, which we did at the speed that you have to do, really slowly. So it took us about 6 minutes to surface, and they saw me dive under the water and then not come up for 6 minutes, and were absolutely certain that I had drowned.
Oh my God!
gosh.
On their watch. I got the biggest of my career when I got back up. And I mean, I should say right now that is a very, very dangerous thing to do, and nobody should ever try that. The possibilities of things going wrong are out there. But I just on the spur of the moment went, oh, he's got some air there, I'll have some of that. And then thought, oh, I can't just swim up now, can I?
Yeah, I know. At least you did the slow ascent, though. Flipping air. You probably gave him a near heart attack as well, I bet.
I would imagine so.
He's probably thinking, I'm going to be the one that's killed Steve Backshall.
But I mean, that is a proper punk animal, isn't it? This invasive lionfish, it looks like a punk. It's got the great big red and white plumes all over its body, just like a Mohican hairdo. And it's going out there and wrecking stuff, completely wrecking environments, decimating them. And, that is anarchy, pure and simple.
So should we talk about why animals are punks? I feel like, addressed two of the main reasons. I mean, both in terms of boldness and attitude, but then also, I guess, those crests, striking horns or spiky feathers. I guess it's not just a cool hairdo, is it?
Well, no, but I mean, cool hairdos have a function, just as, when we go and get our hair done really well, it's because we're probably trying to get off with someone. It's the same thing for animals, right?
Steve, are you sure you've never had a mohawk? I feel that this is surely a part of your history. Yeah.
I've had two hair disasters, one of which was in my late teens. I grew my hair down to my shoulders, so I could have a ponytail.
Yes.
There are photos, but I am not sharing them. The other time was in my 20s when, for a dare, someone dared me to peroxide blonde my hair, and I did it. They dared me a tenner to peroxide blonde my hair. It cost me £30 to have it dyed out again.
Get the pictures, that's all I'm saying. Anyway, so let's talk about some of those functions. So let's start with the crest and the horns and everything. What's cool about how these elaborate kind of signals have evolved is that a lot of the time they have different functions and different purposes. Sometimes it can be to signal aggression, it can be signal to another mate, and in some really cool cases it has a multitude of functions. And I'm going to talk about the cassowary because we touched on that bird in another podcast, but that casque that they've got is just, I think, one of the most extraordinary things. So I'm glad you are. So it's essentially the same in hornbills. It's the same material as their bill. It's made of keratin. It's essentially like a helmet, if you like. And on a cassowary bird, which is of course a flightless bird, enormous, can weigh up to 60 kilograms. They have this beautiful casque that kind of sits on top of their head. What's really cool is that as well as it being kind of this wonderful helmet to signal to others about how wonderful and vibrant they are with their big blue necks and that colourful red wattle as well that they got, you know, the dangly testicle bit, Sarah, that hangs from the neck.
Like a turkey.
Yeah, exactly. That's called a wattle. But the casque is also thought to amplify sound as well. So the research at Chester Zoo looks at infrasound and how they're actually able to produce vocalizations below our hearing to signal to other mates. And you imagine for cassowaries that are, you know, deep in the Australian rainforest, signaling to others across that complex landscape is really, really important to find a mate, to find others, to establish territory, etc. And there's some really cool science going on about how vital that actually is for communicating these sounds.
I've got a question. I know I should know the answer to this, but in cassowaries, the female is bigger and the male takes on parental care. So who then is making those sounds, or who is making more of them? Is it the female to attract a male, or vice versa, or both?
I actually don't know, and I think partly is because they're still trying to understand what those infrasound communication calls are for and how they differ from male to female. So I don't know who calls more or who calls less, and actually how much there is kind of difference in what they're calling as well. They're trying to build up a catalogue of those sounds at the minute. It's really cool.
Have you guys seen cassowaries in the wild?
No, I've been to places in Australia where all the signs are there, but I didn't know if I really wanted to see one or not, because I was like Mission Beach, but I was also like way young, not even like, I don't think I'd even got my degree then. I would have been just walking in blind and probably getting myself into right trouble, knowing me and my clumsiness.
Yeah, I've never seen one. I've tried on the east coast of Australia. We kind of camped along this rainforest edge to try and see one, but never got to, unfortunately. Have you, Steve?
A few times. I would say that one of them was my best filming encounter on the Really Wild show, which I did in the early 2000s with Michaela Strachan and Nick Baker. And I was going up the coast, and we were driving through that area of Queensland that you were just talking about, with the signs everywhere saying, you know, be really careful of cassowaries. And we saw a cassowary at the side of the road, and I jumped out the car with the camera operator and we went into the forest completely barefoot, no preparation, nothing with us apart from the camera. And we walked alongside this cassowary, who could not have cared less about us, for about an hour and a half. And it was an extraordinary encounter. It was the closest thing that I will ever be to actually walking with a dinosaur. You look at their lower legs with that dagger-like toe that they have to protect themselves, the shaggy coat of dark quills, which are probably very like what a lot of theropod dinosaurs would have had. And then the punk look, you know, that incredible bright blue neck, the red wattles you're talking about, the amazing crest on the top of their head. And it was a very, very special experience, right up until the point that she wandered off into the rest of the forest, and we were like, where the hell are we? And we were completely lost, with no radio, no phone, and no shoes. So yeah, it's pretty good. And then we got back to the place we were staying, and there was a male there with his 3 youngsters, and the youngsters were coming up and actually pecking my feet. And when you've heard that, you know, they're supposed to be the most lethal bird in the world, known to disembowel people and dogs with their, you know, dagger-like kicks, it was incredibly intimidating. And this bird was just a total massive dinosaur-like pussycat. I think, you know, unless you properly corner them with a big barking dog that they feel threatened by, they're just minding their own business.
Yeah, and 150 cases, I believe, and we might have to double check that, but I'm pretty sure it's 150 cases of attacks, if you like, or interactions with cassowaries and injuries have all been because of they've been kind of food orientated. So someone's out in a park or eating a sandwich, and then a cassowary comes and essentially tries to eat that, and then they have like a direct kind of issue. Apart from that one case of the death that you talked about. And again, it's like, you know, what an experience to have, because they run 30 miles an hour. They are fiercely territorial, But they're not interested in us. And they get this bad rep, of course, as punks.
How big are they compared to an ostrich then?
I think they're the second biggest ratite, second biggest flightless bird around today, with the moa and elephant bird having been bigger. The tallest females would be significantly taller than I am, kind of getting on for 2 meters, I would say, in height. And they're big. They're
massive.
A very intimidating animal. And if you were to look at them from the knee down, if you were just to film them from the knee down, then you would be convinced that you were looking at a T-Rex. It really is quite something. And, they mostly feed on things like fruit, but we got them on camera traps in New Guinea feeding on rats. And that's one of the things that actually some scientists, biologists will do to attract them to come into camera traps is put down carrion because, any source of protein, and they'll scoff it.
Sounds like Buckbeak off Harry Potter. Just going offering it a rat.
Has anyone got any other proper punky animals?
I do have one particular really punky looking animal, also in Australia. Mary River turtle. It's just like a giant kind of freshwater turtle, one of the largest in Australia, except it sort of the best one that I've seen. They have the green algae that grows on them so that they can merge into the bottom, and the best one I've seen has literally got green mohawk and kind of almost like a bit of a mustache thing going on where the algae has grown all over the top of it, and to be honest, they're a really cool species. They're quite endangered. And there's this one area in Australia that they live where the big threats to them is mostly farmland, agriculture. And the local people have become quite fond of them. And they set up a group, a land care group. And they actually raised loads of money to get scientists in to come and study them and did a lot of nest protection. And they've managed to protect that area from damming, to really, really protect that river. But if you look at it though, and just look at the green algae growing on top of it, I didn't live in the punk era, but I feel like this guy could have done quite happily.
I have a question, Sarah. Is this the turtle that has been known to breathe out of its bum?
Yes, it is. I wasn't going to go there, but if you want to go there, yeah.
How can you not go there? Cloacal respiration, genius.
Hello.
Yeah.
We should quickly hit you with the fact that it is something that some turtles can do, which enables them to extract oxygen from the water through their cloaca, which is, yes, their butt. And that's particularly important during hibernation or when they're submerged for long periods of time. So there you have it. That is your take-home fact from today's podcast. There are turtles that breathe out their butts.
And grow green algae on their head and look real cool.
We should also say that they do still breathe out of their nostrils, by the way. They don't have to go to the surface and scoot on backwards to breathe. They still have that ability. It's just that oxygen transfer. But anyway, we move on.
Can I hit you with my ultimate punk animal and then just drop the mic and leave the room?
Yes, we're ready.
I give you the lowland streaked tenrec.
Oh, it's a favourite.
It looks like Chris Packham during his punk phase. So full on spiky blonde hair, loads of attitude. They stamp on the ground doing a little stampy dance to bring earthworms up to the surface. So it's kind of like being in a mosh pit. And they can use the spines, the hairs that cover their body and give them the most unbelievable punk haircut. They can vibrate them, what's known as stridulating, and that's probably a defense. So it's a way of making themselves seem more threatening either to other tenrecs or potentially to predators too. So they can use their punk haircut as a way of scaring off other punks. How cool is that?
They're the coolest.
Tenrecs, though, are the little hedgehog things. I'm right in thinking tenrecs are the things that look like a hedgehog. They're not a hedgehog, but look like a hedgehog, right?
Exactly right. It's convergent evolution. They look like hedgehogs. They're not hedgehogs, but they have the same kinds of spines to protect themselves. One of the things that I missed, they will have another thing to scare away predators. They'll headbutt them. What could be more punk?
And they're in their own lane, aren't they, tenrecs and Madagascar? And to think that, they have all evolved these wonderful colorations and they all have these incredible spines, as you say, Steve, amazing functions like communication and, camouflage in some cases. But they are, and I have to say, the lowland streaked is one of the most epic looking. That's a really good shout. I love that.
Have we got any other prime punk suspects?
So a few years ago, I stumbled across this incredible conservationist called Paquillo. He's in the Andalusian mountains in Spain, and he works with the Bearded Vulture Conservation Foundation, and they're essentially helping build numbers of bearded vultures back across the Pyrenees and across Europe. And, literally hand by hand, chick by chick, he is feeding these chicks and helping release them back into the wild. But for anyone listening, if you haven't seen a picture of a bearded vulture, they are total punks. Out of all the vultures, they must be one of the most quirky looking. They've even got a bit of a soul patch going on. They've got these kind of bright red rings around their eyes and lovely kind of orangey feathers that are spiky, and they are the punks of the vulture world. They totally are. And making a film about this team was incredible, but the best thing about it was actually one gentleman who would actually sit in the nest every year. He had a male imprinted on him. He's called Cassowary, and his job is to essentially get this male to accept this chick every year. He'll kind of preen with this male. He'll pretend to copulate with this male, and then eventually bring out this chick, lay it on the nest, and there's this really kind of dicey moment where this male will essentially accept or reject this chick. And while we were filming, thank goodness, Cassowary did accept this chick, and then he naturally goes on to help rear this chick so it can be successfully released back into the wild. It's an extraordinary conservation project.
I have so many questions.
Shoot.
Does he dress like a female vulture? How does he get this vulture even interest? Like, what is the pretense for that male vulture? Is it looking at him thinking, oh yeah, this is my mate, of course I'll accept our offspring if he's pretended to copulate? Like, what's going on there?
Yeah, it's not like the conservationists that dress as storks and do the whole kind of incredible mating dance and everything. This male, Cassowary, just imprinted on him when he was quite young, so they are considered a pair. And so Alex will literally every season just head into this nest in this conservation centre and, at some point kind of pass on the baton of protection to this male, and he'll rear the chick. It's phenomenal. It's a well-oiled machine, and it's led to successfully, chicks being released every year. Multiple. Well, not of Cassowary, but out of the centre, there's multiple chicks released every year.
I have quite a punk angle to hit you with on Bearded Vulture.
Yeah.
So hear me out. Right, the way they feed is by grabbing a hold of bones, quite big ones, flying up, dropping them down onto rocks to split them open. It's the way that the sky burial in Tibet has come to be, because people will leave their dead in places that bearded vultures can come, take the bones and drop them. Have you heard the story of Aeschylus, the Greek philosopher?
No.
Aeschylus was killed by a bearded vulture picking up a tortoise, seeing his bald head, thinking it was a rock, and dropping the tortoise. It hit him on the head and killed him stone dead. Is there a more punk way to end your life than that?
That is brilliant. And again, I mean, it's funny because even now there's tales of bearded vultures apparently picking up small lambs and, being really destructive to livestock, but it's just not the case. They're bone breakers, as you say. They drop bones from heights, and because of their acidity in their stomach, they're able to eat bones really well. It's a big part of their diet, so that is amazing.
When's your Bearded Vulture film being done, Lizzie?
That's already out. It's already out on YouTube. It's just a conservation film for the conservation team, so please check it out.
Amazing. I have two last little ones to chuck in there, one of which is the saber-toothed blenny. So you know about cleaner fish that hang out around cleaning stations, and bigger fish and marine animals will come in to be picked clean of parasites by those cleaner fish. There is a sneaky mimic called the saber-toothed blenny that has the same shape and the same colours. So larger animals will come in to be cleaned, and the saber-toothed blenny sneaks in and savages them and bites a big chunk out of their fins before swimming off, which to me is pretty punk. And then I want to finish just by saying that I think cats are punk. Cats are anarchists. Cats hang out around our houses. They take everything from us, and then they just look at us like, what? I'm not giving you anything back in return. What do you want? And then they're off. And I think that is the ultimate punk attitude is found in our humble domestic cats.
Are you a cat person or a dog person, Sarah?
I've got both. I could show you specimen A and bring Denzel on screen right now, who actually now you've described it, he's got one eye. He got shot in the eye when he was a kitten, so he's got one eye, a lead bullet in the back of his throat somewhere. He was run over by a car in his blind spot. He's still going. Still catches a squirrel on the branch while it runs. He is a punk, I suppose. But yeah, absolute hard as nails cat.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there, Steve. Right, that's it for today. Remember, you'll have a Q&A episode coming your way on Friday. So remember to please send your questions to questions@that'sjustwild.com and we'll get to it.
We are a bare-skinned piglet of a show, so any support's really welcome. You can follow us on your favourite podcast app, leave a review, it makes all the difference to the whole team. And for ad-free listening, our newsletter, special deep dive episodes and members-only benefits, you can subscribe to us at that'sjustwild.com. That'sjustwild.com. So we're on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and you can find us at That's Just Wild Pod.
All right, thanks for listening. See you next week.